What's up, everybody? After 2-ish weeks off of YouTube, Callus Draft League has officially begun, and I am super excited to talk about this format again. A lot of you guys liked it. I enjoy doing these. It's a win-win. First of all, huge welcome to anybody returning, and in particular, I've gained 200-something new subs, which for me is huge. That's a pretty significant percentage of my overall subscribers on this tiny little channel. A lot of you guys came over here from watching my work on Jim's Tour. So if any of you guys in particular are watching this, thank you so much for subscribing. Very happy to have you here. A hearty and heartfelt welcome from me to you. Hopefully you enjoy this kind of content, but if not, there will obviously be gameplay coverage coming soon as well. We're covering this match in particular because, as it happens, it was the very first draft done in week 1 of Callus Draft League. These guys banged it out really quickly. I did the pairings late Monday night. I'm now narrating this Tuesday morning before work, and whatever time at night, 11, midnight, whatever it was last night, they just banged the whole damn thing out. And yeah, they are by far the first draft done, and therefore they're going to get covered. And my understanding is this is a pretty good matchup as well. SPFunkM, he is on the red team in the context of this tournament. We saw him in Callus Draft League, and he looked like a pretty solid, competent player who understood the format. So I definitely know that he's good. Volta, I'll be honest, I had never heard of prior to this tournament, but my understanding from people who are more in the draft circuit than I am, who are involved in these draft leagues, I guess this guy's pretty good and pretty well respected. I think this is a highlight match in the minds of the in-the-know draft people. So let's get into it. Hopefully you guys remember this format. I don't want to spend too much time on the rules, but even if you've never seen this before, I think if you just watch along, it'll be pretty self-explanatory. And as you can see, in this case, randomly chosen, it's going to be Funk, who is our player 1 over here on the left, and Volta, who is our player 2 on the right. I guess a cool effect is I could change it to match their team colors, so it's red team for Funk, orange team for Volta. It doesn't matter in this context. I just use the red and the blue to make it very visually distinct. So let's get into it. Funk, as player 1, has the first ban, and he says Metagross, not going to be part of this. There is a growing consensus. Some people are really still on the Skarm train, but there's definitely a growing consensus that Metagross is the overall best Pokemon in this format. Does it need to be banned by the tournament, the way that Jirachi and Suicune are? I'm definitely not there. It's okay for something to be the best poke. The fact that something is the best poke doesn't mean that it's utterly broken or that it is so unfair and dominating that it's got to go, which is the way that I view Suicune and Jirachi. I don't view Metagross as that, but it very well might be, considering its resistances, its versatility, its splash ability, its overall base stats. It very well might be the best Pokemon in this format. I'm coming around to that as well. On the other side, Blissey is one of those bans. I've seen Blissey banned in the first round of bans. I've seen Blissey picked pretty late in round 1. Very polarizing the way that people feel about this Mon. Blissey, I actually think I might be more inclined to ban than Metagross. Not that I'm inclined to ban either one. Tournament ban, I mean, not ban here. Because it just shuts off so much of the format, because it just takes so much play away from basically any pure special attacker. Now, granted, you can get creative with anything. Oh, Blissey shuts off at Ninetales. Oh, yeah? What if I hit it with Toxic and Confuse Ray? Or, oh, yeah? What if I hit it with Hypnosis? I mean, there's always little dumb things to try to get around it, but by and large, any special attacker that doesn't learn Focus Punch, which is many of them, Blissey gives it a really, really hard time. So I can see why Volta would want to get that out of there. Now, granted, I don't think Funk was ever really going to first pick Blissey. So if it's something that he views as broken, he has the option of taking it really early. But that hasn't been the norm. Generally speaking, it either just gets banned because of what it does, or when it does get picked, it gets picked later in round 1. It's never really one of the first couple of picks in my experience so far with this format, which admittedly, as we know, is relatively new. So the next ban is going to be Raikou, which is interesting. Initially, when we were doing this format for the first time, so the very opening rounds of this format even existing in Callus Draft Duel, Raikou was a pretty common ban. People viewed it the same way that they view it in Emerald Open, where it is probably the best poke. Either that or meta. I think Raikou is the best poke in Emerald Open, but top 3, unarguably. And I think people were viewing it the same way in this case. And as it turns out, Raikou is not a top 3 Mon in this format. That doesn't mean it isn't good. That doesn't mean it isn't a threat. But as the tournament wore on and the players who were doing better and had more experience with this started to learn the format a bit more, Raikou was getting banned less and less and less. It was still a viable pick. It was still a late round 1. Hell, sometimes it even made it to the second round of bans. But Raikou was not considered a must ban as the tournament went on. That being said, Funk is not new to this format. He's someone who did play in Callus Draft Duel, and he still wants Raikou out, so something to say there. And then unsurprising, not only because Blissey got banned, and this is the partner in crime, but the Player 2 obligatory ban, or so the meta seems to be right now, is just getting rid of Skarm, in that it is very centralizing. I don't think that Skarm is better than Metagross. I don't even know that I think Skarm is better than Zapdos necessarily, but it shuts off many physical attackers, and obviously the omnipresent presence of spikes forces you to have some spinners, and if you, as the Skarm drafter, make a point to take early spinners, you can leave your opponent with some serious jank, and it gets weird. So that ban, pretty self-explanatory. Don't want to spend more time than is necessary. So, with quite a few good options here, Zapdos, Gengar, Tyranitar, Salamence, Snorlax, all common things that might get taken in this situation, Funk is going to opt for Tyranitar, which is fine. I might do that as well. Cheetar, I think, somehow got underrated in this format. In Emerald Open, I don't think it's as good because it's easy to load up. It does have a lot of weaknesses. You can load your whole team with Focus Punches and Brick Breaks and whatever. It's still definitely good, but I think it's better in this than it is in Emerald Open. Cheetar, for me, is right in the conversation as the overall best poke in this. Cheetar, Meta, Zapdos, I think, are in the conversation. Skarm is up there as well, but I rate Cheetar very, very highly, and I'm okay with this pick. I would consider Zapdos and Salamence, I guess, but probably in this position, I would lean Cheetar as well, but I don't feel that it's a black and white right or wrong. There's a couple different ways you can go with it, and this is how Funk feels the most comfortable. No qualms from me. The response here is going to be Celebi and Salamence, which I'm fine with. Celebi in particular stands out for me because the special wall Blissey already removed, so we're going to be fighting for special walls. I think that Lax is going to get picked really soon because it has value in that regard. And then there's the typical Regis fight that we always have. But it's hard to know because my understanding is that Volta is completely new to this format, and we may get some new perspective watching him in action. He may see it completely differently than the players in Callus Draft Duel did. And that's half the fun of effectively starting fresh with all these new players who bring their own perspectives. And maybe they will teach us something about the format that we didn't know before. There's still a lot of room to learn. But getting back to the other picks, like I said, unsurprising that Snorlax gets grabbed here. I think that Funk doesn't want to be left out in the dark with the special walls this early on. And then he's going to take what he very well may view as simply the best Pokemon still available, and just a very safe generalist Pokemon. Zapdos, super splashable, can go on any team, offensive or defensive. It just does it all. So I think these are pretty reasonable picks, securing one of the special walls, and then just grabbing, arguably, the best thing still available. Now, the retaliation here, I think, makes sense as well. It is interesting to me that he leaves Gengar floating. Gengar is banned a lot of the time, and for a Pokemon that people think is so good that you have to ban it, it is interesting to me then that when it is unbanned, it gets through this far. And I don't think it's going to go too much longer, but for now, Aerodactyl Starmie. Aerodactyl, I think, an obligatory pick. Not only is it reasonable against all three of these things, Zapdos in particular, of course, but you really, really, really don't want to give your opponent both T-Tar and Arrow. We've seen that happen before, and when that happens, the whole draft devolves and basically revolves around fighting over every rock resist imaginable. You start getting weird bans, you start getting Donphan bans, and people taking, weird early Flygons and stuff like that. The whole draft becomes fighting over rock resists, and you get forced to have like 2.5 rock resist per team. Some of them are going to blow, and you don't know in which game the T-Tar and the Aerodactyl are coming. It's messy. It's not a good place to be from the builder's perspective. You're always scrambling, afraid of when the rock guys are going to come. Best to avoid that situation. And Aerodactyl is just really good in the format in general. It's also a defensive protection pick because Aerodactyl is good against both Celebi and Mence, and honestly to a lesser extent Starmie as well. So it's good against all the things that Volta has also. So you absolutely have to take Arrow here. I think passing it back would be objectively wrong. And then what you do with the other pick is debatable. I think Gengar, Starmie, and Milotic are all very viable options here. Taking Starmie's fine if he prioritizes taking the good spinner and the natural Curemon over those other things. Fine. Kind of surprised that Milotic isn't grabbed here. It's going to give Funk an opportunity to take Milo into the Salamence drafter. But to be fair, with the things that Volta's already taken and with the way that he's positioned himself, Milotic does not seem good into the early goings of Volta's draft. It's certainly good against Salamence, but it's not good against Celebi or Starmie, and it's only okay against Aerodactyl. So that kind of puts Funk in an interesting position. He's kind of inclined to take Swampert here, given that the Aerodactyl was just taken and that there's already a Salamence there. So we'll see how he chooses to respond. I guess there's a world we could take both the Swampert and the Milotic, but then he'd be passing Gengar back. So he can't have it all. He's going to have to pick and choose. And the response from Funk is going to be, he's going to take the Gengar now, which, like I said, 4 bans and 7 picks in. I'm surprised that Gengar, that's such a feared Pokemon in this format, made it this far. And as far as bulky waters, he's going to opt for Swampert over Milotic. Generally speaking, meaning not applicable necessarily to this specific draft, generally speaking, I think Milotic is better than Swampert in this, and that seems to be the consensus in this as well. But generally speaking, doesn't mean a lot the moment the draft gets going, because the whole format is just honing in on specifically what's going on in this draft. What is your opponent taking? What are you taking? What are the options? And going from there. So as far as taking Swampert here, I don't hate it. I mean, again, the Mence on the other side could be dangerous, but certainly your Zapdos and your Gengar are going to help somewhat against the Mence on the other side. But the real thing with Swampert is that it is both one of the very best checks against Arrow and simultaneously one of the very best checks against T-Tar. And I think protecting your T-Tar is super duper valuable because, frankly, T-Tar against the overwhelming majority of teams can just DD up twice on like a bulky set, just sweep, just win. And if you don't have things like Swampert on the other side, there just isn't a lot that most teams can do to stop that. So for that reason alone, just the protection of your own T-Tar and the ability to theoretically check the Arrow if you get that matchup, I think that I'm okay in this context with the Swampert over the Milotic. That being said, I think Volta should absolutely not pass the Milotic back. He gave his opponent a choice, can't have it all. He took these 2 Mons, Gengar, Swampert. Totally fine, totally viable, great picks. But you got to cut off the Milo now. You can't let that go back. So these picks both make sense immediately. So Milotic, obviously, both taking a bulky water, his second if you want to count Starmie, taking the Salamence counter, taking possibly the overall best bulky water in this format. That being said, I don't think Milotic is fantastic into the draft on the other side. Don't love it into Lax, don't love it into Zapdos, don't love it into Gengar. It's only okay against T-Tar, but Milotic is just going to be generally good, even if it isn't necessarily amazing against the early selections from Funk. And then additionally, this pick makes sense to me as well. Hariyama is obviously good against both T-Tar and Lax, and boy, are you going to need T-Tar counters just as a whole in general, and even more so when Swampert gets picked up by your opponent. So he's going to have to load up on things that genuinely beat T-Tar. The fact that he's got Hariyama into Tar Lax is a good starting point, and less importantly, in the context of the specific matchup that we're dealing with here, it is also very possible that he could use it as a Gengar counter, for example. It could have Guts and trigger off of Will-O-Wisp, or it could have Thick Fat and be a special wall. Could be a way to deal with Gars when he doesn't currently have a dedicated special wall other than maybe Celebi. But I think the Hariyama pick makes a lot of sense. On the flip side, what I would consider an early Dragonite, and you guys know if you've watched any of my videos in this format that I love me some Dragonite in this, so I found that very interesting. I found that to be, I'm not hating it. You guys know that I love Dragonite, but most people do not respect it enough to take it this early. And we'll see if that ends up being a good decision or not. But yeah, I'm not going to knock that pick. It's so versatile. It's just a great threat. I'm trying to think what he possibly could have taken instead had he not opted to go for Dragonite there. I mean, the Reggies are on the table as an obvious example. Some people like Dugtrio a hell of a lot more than I do. Gyarados still available. Fortress is another big one that people started thinking as a really, really high pick as the tournament went on. I mean, as much as I love Dragonite, I don't know that I necessarily like it better than like Regice or Fortress. Those are two real standout picks to me. But given what's on the other side, I mean, it can one-hit KO Mence. It can be a big threat to Celebi. It can threaten the Aerodactyl, T-Wave, what have you. It can threaten the Milo. It can, as a physical threat, it can threaten the Hariyama. I don't hate it. I rate Dragonite very, very highly, both in this and in Emerald Open. And then, yeah, I mean, the Vaporeon, I'm not as excited about that pick, but he might just be trying to fight for the bulky waters and win with the T-Tar rather than letting his opponent win with the Aerodactyl and the Salamence. I don't hate the Vaporeon pick. It might be as simple as just being another Salamence check, especially when both the Starmie and the Milotic got eaten up by his opponent. So, moving over to bans, it's now going to be player 2, Volta, starting off the bans, 2 bans each, and then post bans, Volta is going to have the double pick. So that being said, Volta is going to remove Jolteon, and I can see why. I could see the Salamence, Aerodactyl, Starmie, and Milotic all not really wanting to play against that, so that makes plenty of sense to me. Funk is going to get rid of Moltres. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better against Funk than it would be against Volta. Moltres not fantastic into Aerodactyl, Starmie, Milotic, so I can see the thought process of if he doesn't think it's that great into his opponent, or if he doesn't plan on taking it sometime soon, sometime relatively early, then just get rid of it because the opponent very well may. It seems reasonable against Funk. Not world-beating, but definitely solid. I could see why he wouldn't want that there. Like I said, especially when he probably looks on the other side and thinks that Moltres is not world-beating against what Volta has already taken. Here comes the Dugtrio ban. If you guys watched any of my videos in the previous edition where this format was used, Callus Draft Duel rather than Callus Draft League, you guys know that I think Dugtrio blows chunks. I look here at the team on the other side. You could trap the T-Tar and maybe a sleeping, unboosted Lax. And that is basically fucking it. You don't trap Zapdos, you don't trap Gengar, you don't trap Dragonite, and you don't kill the Vaporeon or the Swampert, but they sure as hell kill you. Doesn't seem that good into this team. On the flip side, since Volta's the one banning it, what is he worried about? Not trapping Mence, not trapping Aerodactyl, not trapping Milotic, maybe Starmie, with like really specific circumstances, but full health Starmie is always going to live a non-crit if it is even remotely bulky. Likewise, Celebi, if it is remotely bulky, will survive Dugtrio and one-hit KO it back. And then same thing, Dugtrio will not kill an awake, remotely healthy Hariyama, and then it will just die back. Doesn't seem that good. This Pokemon sucks. Don't pick it. Don't ban it. It blows. Let your opponent take it. That being said, Volta disagrees and he gets it out of there. On the flip side, Gyarados removed from the pool. Interesting. I almost wonder if he should have picked that. He's the one with the Zapdos counter, and to a lesser extent the Gengar, the Dragonite, the T-Tar counter that can all handle Gyarados. I kind of wonder if he should have let that stay in there and just taken it for himself. I wonder why he got rid of Gyarados. I think he's like okay-ish to handle it, but he might be worried. It might be the same process as with Moltres. He might see like, oh, it's going to be bulky, recover, T-Bolt, Starmie on the other side. Oh, it's going to be DD Mence on the other side. Oh, Aerodactyl on the other side. I don't want to play against that. He might just view it, just like with Moltres, as I really don't think this is that great against my opponent. So if I'm not going to take it relatively soon, if I don't think it is something that's going to help me, then I might as well not let my opponent have it either. So he might have simply banned 2 pokes that he thinks are scary, but that are not great into his opponent. Might be as simple as that. So after those bans, it goes back over to Volta with the double pick. And with one Firebird gone, he's going to immediately seize on the opportunity to grab another. He's going to grab Charizard, and then along with it, he's going to grab Heracross. So Charizard and Moltres, as we discuss most times, same typing, they function pretty differently. Let's look at Charizard in particular. The Focus Punch threat, obviously, with T-Tar and Lax on the other side, is very real. And then between Fire Grass coverage as a hypothetical, it actually covers basically everything on the other team, save Dragonite. So I can see Charizard being a real threat, given what's on the other side for Funk. I like the Charizard pick for sure. It makes a lot of sense to me. Heracross, not bad either. The Intimidators right now, so Mence is on Volta's side, and then Funk kindly removed one of the Heracross counters in Gyarados, so there's not really a good Intimidator to switch in right now. And then as far as fighting checks, yeah, I mean, Gengar, obviously, but any of these other things certainly have to watch out. Dragonite and Zapdos are okay against Heracross, but they don't love Rock Slide by any means. And then obviously the Fighting Bug combo against the rest of this stuff, pretty real. So I think Volta picked 2 very legitimate threats here. And yeah, I can get behind those picks. They both make sense to me. Here's some interesting picks. So Medicham, that one's fine, not the interesting one. But Regirock, actually. Regirock. I like Regirock. It's good in this format. The part that's surprising to me is that Regirock in a non-Darth Tyros draft is the first Reggie that gets taken. Generally speaking, people think that Regirock is the worst Reggie. Not to say that it's bad. It's not. I actually think it's good. But I think both Regice and Registeel are even better. So it's interesting that with all 3 Reggies available, the one that he values here the most is Regirock. Interesting. It certainly could be because he's got Zapdos and Dragonite on his side and simply doesn't want to play against a good Rock Bond. Could be as simple as that. It's reasonable against the Mence and the Arrow on the other side as well. So as weird as this pick may look on paper, I think it actually may be very heads up. It might be the right pick in this moment, even if on a blank slate start of draft tier list, perhaps one or both of the other Reggies would be higher. In this moment, I think the Regirock pick, like I said, given the Mence, given the Arrow, given the Dragonite, given the Zapdos, the way that stuff fell, I think Regirock might actually be better than those other 2. He just picked up Charizard as well, so yeah, it doesn't take a lot of convincing for me. I can see why he made this pick. I can get there, and that might be very, very heads up. As far as the Medicham, I think that's also reasonable. I think that's also wise. I think that other fighters might have a hard time against Celebi, Starmie, Milotic even maybe, what have you. Not the case for Medicham. It's the special fighter that genuinely threatens those things, and then taking fighters for yourself is fewer fighters that your opponent can take. Volta's obviously interested in them. He's already taken 2. So might as well give fewer options in that regard, since you obviously, as the T-Tar Lax player, don't want to play against a mountain of fighters in any given game. So going back, this one, yeah, I think I kind of disagree, but let's show the picks. So he's going to go Cloyster Venusaur. Okay. These picks aren't bad, but I feel very strongly that Fori is just better, and like better by a good amount than Cloyster in this. I'll, I guess, throw 2 caveats on that. One, I could just be wrong. Happens a million times a day, so might just be incorrect, but that's how I feel. And the second one being that Volta, like I said, I don't know how much he's watched, studied, checked out other people doing this format, whatever. But Volta, to the fullest extent of my knowledge, is completely new to this, and might just not realize that it's largely agreed upon that Fori is better than Cloyster in this. Maybe he sees it his own way, maybe he's new, maybe a little bit of both, I don't know. But there's no way for me that I would take Cloyster over Fori. I mean, basically at all, but very much in these circumstances either, because another thing that he does, he adds another electric weakness here. So he's currently looking at Aerodactyl, Starmie, Milotic, Charizard, Cloyster, 5 electric weaknesses with only the Celebi and I guess now the Venusaur as resistances. So we're looking at a 5-to-2 weakness to resistance ratio into a guy with Zapdos, and you know that Gengar is going to have Thunderbolt as well. Dragonite very well may have Thunderbolt, so there's no shortage of good electric attacks on the other side. So he's going to pick up a 5th electric weakness and take, in my opinion, a clearly inferior Mon by going Cloyster over Fori. So we'll see. I've been pretty good with basically everything so far. These guys seem like good drafters. This pick I definitely don't agree with, and I would have done differently. And you guys can certainly let me know in the comments if you think that I'm overreacting, if this pick is fine, if I'm missing something, what have you. But for me, if you're going to go Spike or Spinner here, it is absolutely Fortress and not Cloyster. As far as the Venusaur is concerned, he takes away a good fighting resist potentially from his opponent. He adds a second grass type to make life more difficult for the Swampert and the Vaporeon. He adds a second potential Leech Seeder for the Lax. The Venusaur, a little early maybe. Again, there's like Regice, Registeel, Fortress, that kind of thing still in the pool. So I don't know that I love either of these picks, but the Venusaur I can get a little bit more behind. I don't like the Cloyster pick. On the flip side, we're going to see... Ooh. Okay. I didn't look ahead to see these. All right, we're getting a little spicy here. We're going to go... Breloom Kingdra. All right. Well, I guess that Funk does not want to be left out of the fighter game. So after taking the Medicham, he's going to, in his next round, take another fighter in Breloom. Again, he does not want to play against the fighters himself. I don't know that fighters are incredible in general against Volta. Medicham, like I said, the exception rather than the rule. But, like, I don't know, Breloom into Celebi, Salamence, Aerodactyl, Starmie does not blow me away. It's not incredible against Charizard or Heracross or Venusaur either. I don't hate it as much as I just hated the Cloyster pick, but I don't think I really like this Breloom pick either. Again, feel like there had to be something better available. Again, Fori, again, Regice, again, Registeel. Not blown away by the Breloom pick. Meh. Kingdra, on the other hand, I can get a little bit more behind. The Kingdra is a creative way to beat the arrow, because obviously after Rain Dance, you're faster than it and basically everything else. It has the same concept, where it can one-hit KO the Salamence with Ice Beam. It can be reasonable against the Celebi if you're faster because of Rain, and you can put a little bit of pressure. It's reasonable against Charizard. It's a decent special attacker in general against a player, Volta, who really doesn't have much in the way of special walls right now, and I would very much like to see him address that. If I'm Volta, I would windmill slam both Reggies into my pile right now, and it's way later than they should be. We saw a ton of round 1 Reggie picks as Callus Draft Duel got into the later rounds. But people have either forgotten or decided that that was not the play, because we are not seeing the Reggie love that we normally do. And I'm having a hard time thinking that that could be right. So Volta is going to opt for a bulky water, his third if you count the Starmie, by picking up Slowbro. And then finally a little bit of love. These are way later than they should be. Here is Registeel. Like I said, Registeel, better than Venusaur, better than Slowbro, better than Kingdra, better than Breloom, probably better than like Heracross and Charizard, but at least that's, and Medicham, but at least that's like a little bit more debatable. But this is way later than Registeel should be going in this format, in my opinion, and that is a hell of a pickup and a hell of a steal this late for Volta. One of the very best generalist special walls. It gives them a rock resist. That pick should have been made ages ago. Super steal this late. Almost as much of a steal, and this is highway fucking robbery, as these picks. End of round 2, Regice Fortress double pick. Are you kidding me? That is insanity. That just should never ever happen. And this is a relatively casual tour. A lot of these players have never done this format before. You're going to see goofy things like this, but make no mistake, this is goofy. This shouldn't happen. Both of these should be off the board way before now. And it is crazy both that Funk passed on it for so long and that Volta allowed this to happen. I don't want to make either of these guys feel bad. Like I said, casual tour, new to the format. You're going to see some weird stuff. This is not something that should happen. It just isn't. And I'll leave it at that. And on the other end, it's going to be Volta with the double pick. He's going to scoop up Blaziken and a relatively late Claydol. Now, granted, currently only the one Spiker in the 4E on the other side. So, like, a spinner is not priority number 1 right now, but there's always the ability to pick up late Spikers, and you'll just want to have a spinner just in case. But even if it isn't broken as a spinner in this regard, because like I said, only the one Spiker on the other side, reasonably good against Tar, reasonably good against Zapdos, something your Aerodactyl doesn't necessarily want to play against, okay against Breloom, okay against Regirock. Claydol just on its own, even as a non-spinner, has a little bit of use, and Rock Resists are really valuable given the way the T-Tar and the Aerodactyl got split. Totally fine with the Claydol pick. As far as Blaziken, sure, if he's in the mindset that he wants a fighter on every team, and the only two good choices that are remaining in his mind are Blaziken and Machamp, you're going to take one or the other? Yeah, I think I agree. I think I would rather have Blaziken, so fair enough. He's going to presumably split those up and have the Hera, the Hariyama, the Blaziken all on separate teams. He's opted for a second Firemon. Fire as a type doesn't absolutely blow me away against Funk, but he did just pick up 2 Fire Weeks in 4E and Regice, so it makes the picks a little bit better. I could take or leave the Blaziken, but it doesn't offend me at all. We saw it win 2 games on its own in Callus Draft Duel. Super dangerous with reversal, though a little bit less tempting to do that with the T-Tar making sand on the other side. Still a dangerous Mon without a doubt. Cool with the Blaziken pick. So, final round of bans. It now falls over to Funk again, and he wants to get rid of Sceptile. Makes sense to me. Fast Generalist. Swampert hates it. Vaporeon hates it. T-Tar doesn't love it. Lax doesn't love it. I can see why he'd want to get that out of there. Annoying poke. Pretty good against his team. Not amazing against the team on the other side. That seems to be his ban philosophy in general. Stuff that isn't great against his opponent, so he's probably not going to take it, but he himself doesn't really want to play against it. And yeah, that makes plenty of logical sense to me. So Sceptile's out. Volta, going to remove Alakazam. Not too dissimilar from Sceptile. Obviously, they have different typing and function a little bit differently, but both just fast, versatile, special threats that wrong time, wrong circumstances, end of a game, can combine once and just sweep through, clean up the whole damn team. Something that you probably feel a lot safer not being there, and especially if you don't want to play the game where you take like Houndoom or Umbreon and you just hope that you get it in on the matchup where Alakazam is, and then maybe you're wrong. Instead of playing that game, just get rid of it. That being said, speaking of the Pursuit users, see this Gengar on the other side? At what point does Volta pick up Umbreon and or Houndoom? I would strongly consider, given the Gengar on the other side, I would strongly consider legit double picking those if I'm Volta and trying to make life a lot more difficult for the Gengar. The next ban for Funk, gonna take Steelix out of play. Sure. That ban makes a lot of sense to me. If I were Volta, I probably would have picked it somewhere in round 2. But in doing so, he's going to protect both his Cheetar and his Zapdos. Now, granted, is there an argument that that Funk should take Steelix, trying to get it against the Aerodactyl? Sure, but I think I like banning it better than taking it. I don't think Steelix as a whole is all that good against Volta. The Water Mons threaten it. The Fire Mons threaten it. Overall, I'm looking at a lot of things. Salamence, Aerodactyl, Starmie, Milotic, Hariyama, Charizard, Heracross, Cloyster, Slowbro, Blaziken, Claydol. I'm looking at a mountain of things that can hit Steelix super effectively, so it probably isn't great against Volta. So yeah, again, Funk's banning philosophy seems as straightforward as I'm going to just ban stuff that isn't great into my opponent and that I'm not going to pick, and I don't really want them to pick. Simple as that. And then finally, a strange ban in my mind. Lantern coming down? Huh. I mean, it's more so Funk who has the electric attackers in Zapdos, Gengar, Dragonite, more so than Volta. I don't know. Regice too, so it's like 4 electric attackers for Funk, but like what are the electric attackers for Volta? Why do you want Voltabsorb to not be there? What are you worried on your end about getting Voltabsorbed? Your Starmie T-Bolt? I guess. That ban is strange to me. I don't understand the Lantern ban. If anything, it seems like a nice late value pick that Volta could have taken against Funk. I'm not clear on why you'd get rid of it here. I'm sure he's got his reasons, but it's not immediately apparent to me. So that one stands out as a little bit strange to me. Alrighty, so home stretch. So the third and final round of picks, starting with Funk. He's going to grab probably the best spiker still available, either Smeargle or Glalie. I actually think Glalie is a little bit better. I lied. I forgot about that Mon for just a moment. But he's going to grab one of the best spikers available, and then he's also going to grab... it's a spinner. I'm going to grab Hitmontop. Smeargle's fine. Good spiker. Like I said, maybe not better than Glalie, but Spore is a broken move, so fine with it. That's going to be his second spiker into a dude who has 3 spinners, so whatever. But again, Spore is broken. Hitmontop is not a Mon that I rate at all. I understand that it spins. I understand that it is niche checks against T-Tar or against the Reggies or whatever. I think Hitmontop blows. I think it super duper is let down in the bulk department despite its really high special defense stat, by its really bad HP stat. I think its move pool is not very good. I think it's slow. It just... I've never been able... I've tried it in OU. I've tried it in UU. I've tried it in various draft formats, or at least in simulations of draft formats. I've never been able to make Hitmontop work for me. I think that poke sucks, but who knows? Funk, show me the power of Hitmontop. I'm ready. It does have Intimidate, so there's that. Okay. Whoa now on these picks. Okay. Weezing's good. No problem. I like Weezing. What the fuck is this pick? Here comes Lanoon. What? I mean, look, even if you're going to take Lanoon, which, like, don't. But even if you're going to take Lanoon, I think he could have saved it to literally his last pick because, like, there's no way that Funk was taking that, right? Like, is that really the thing to take here? Is that really the optimal thing to take here? In a world where Houndoom and Umbreon are floating and you can eat the Gengar, we're going to go with Lanoon. Hey, I'll be the first person when I commentate on this set to get excited and give him props and be like, my God, I was so wrong. It was so good. You're the man. If he manages to cheese a game with Lanoon. My opinion for now, before that happens, is that Lanoon absolutely blows and just should honestly just never get picked at all, but if it's got to be picked, should be dead last. Hey, make it happen, dude. That would be a great video from the viewer perspective. I love anything that entertains my fans, and I can't think of too much that would happen in this format that would be more entertaining than a belly drum Lanoon sweep. Make it happen, my man. I'm cheering for you. On the other side, Funk is going to opt for Jinx, Goodmon, Overperformer in Callus Draft Duel, and Glalie. So yeah, we're looking now at 3 spikers for Funk into 3 spinners for Volta. It seems fair. And yeah, like I said, Jinx was an overperformer in Callus Draft Duel, was an impressive Mon there. As an attacker, threat to Celebi, Salamence, Aerodactyl, not threatened by the Milotic, can maybe sub up on it, can put it to sleep, what have you, against a lot of this other slower stuff, against Slowbro, against Venusaur, against Regis, against Doll, can threaten to put them to sleep and then do its thing. The Jinx pick makes sense to me. And Glalie just good in general. A late pick for Glalie, who was very often taken in the second round in the latter stages of Callus Draft Duel. Good value this late. Both of these Pokemon, so we're very clear, listeners, are better than Lanoon. On the flip side, Scizor, sure. And then Houndoom. Houndoom, one of the things that I was recommending for Volta, so I think, obviously if I'm recommending it, I think it's good. I'm glad that he took that. I would like to see him also take Umbreon, but the Houndoom is a good first step. As it turns out, 2 fire weaknesses just taken from Funk in Jinx and Glalie, so even more incentive to do that. And then that might be a similar thought process with the Scizor. These are both weak to Steel as well, being Ice types. And then there's other Steel weaknesses already present, such as the Regice, the Regirock, the Cheetar, and so on and so forth. It is also a normal resist against the Lax. And if there's any like Tauros shenanigans or whatever later, always good to have just general normal resists. These picks are fine. On the flip side, we're going to see Arcanine and Misdreavus. Interesting. People have not learned from Grandmaster Zakaru, it seems. Zakaru is adamant that outside of Gengar, of course, that Sableye is the ghost that you want to have in this format, but we still have a world where people prefer Misdreavus and Dusclops over Sableye. Zakaru would be screaming in French as he eats a snail that is wrong. I'm not even going to try a French accent because I'll fail. I was going to do an impression, but it's going to make me look bad more than Zakaru, so we're going to not do it. But I know that that's a pick that he would disagree with, and I think a lot of the top guys in Callus Draft Duel have come around that Sableye is actually better than Misdreavus and Dusclops. We'll see if that ends up being the case, but that is where we left off last time we visited this format. Not that Misdreavus is a bad pick. It's not. But if he's just going for a Ghost for Spike's protection, and the fact that it protects his Lax, because Lax really has a hard time with Sableye, believe it or not, perhaps he could have taken this a different way. Arcanine is good. Scizor just take it on the other side with the double fire weakness, and in general, Firemon seem good against Funk, so I could see not wanting to play against another one. It also gives him a second Intimidator, which is always good to have, so while the Arcanine doesn't necessarily blow me away, it makes plenty of sense to me. It very well may end up making a team. Totally fine with the pick. We're going to have another example here of people not respecting the Sableye. It's going to be another Ghost, this time Dusclops taken in what could have been the Sableye slot. And this might be even more egregious because, again, it's particularly good against Lax. So if you know that you're playing against Lax, Sableye makes even more sense to me than Dusclops, but he sees it differently, and to be fair, when you know that your opponent does have spinners on the other side, in this case we're looking at Fori, in this case we're looking at Hitmontop, Dusclops does very much stop those things dead in their effing tracks. So even though Volta is not himself all that spikes heavy, on the one team where he does have spikes with Cloyster, he will probably have the Dusclops as well, which is predictable, by the way, so not perfect in that regard. But he will probably pair those two together, and he will probably be able to fortify those spikes and keep them down. Nidoking, not as bad as Hitmontop, but falls in the same general category for me. I've never been able to personally make it work in any format that I've tried it in, whether it's OU, UU, or Draft. I've played against it in Draft, and it's been like okay. It's versatile, and it always takes one hit, but it never takes two from like anything, and it never feels, it's just lacking all the way around. It's never quite fast enough. It never hits quite hard enough. It's never quite bulky enough. It's always just a little bit shy of what I want to do. If it were just a smidge better in just one area, a little faster, hit a little harder, a little bulkier, maybe I can get there. The move pool's great, the versatility's great, but I've just never been able to make Nidoking work myself. Finally, on the other side, rounding out the picks for Funk, we've got Ludicolo, makeshift special wall if need be, and a very late Flygon. That's very good value, especially for someone who's going to be bringing spikes, presumably, in all three games. Flygon loves some spikes. A peanut butter and jelly-esque combination and complement. Flygon and spikes, mwah, chef's kiss. Flygon kind of blows without spikes in a lot of matchups. He's much, much, much better with spikes. So yeah, and it's good against Cheetar, obviously. So yeah, I think that's a really late Flygon. Pretty damn good value there. And then finally, Volta. Going to go for the Armaldo, which was commonly taken against people who have Snorlax, happens to be good with its bug typing against Cheetar, or the rock typing against Dragonite, and what have you, but it's largely a pick against the Lax. It also gives him the option of another spinner or a knockoff user, whatever he wants to do. He might feel that he's padded enough between all the fighters and the double Leech Seeder and the Wheezing, what have you. He might feel that he's padded enough against the Lax to where he's comfortable taking the Dusclops over the Sableye, which I don't actually hate in this situation, because like I said, with the particulars of who the spinners are in Hitmontop and Fori, they are not breaking Dusclops. So I'm okay with it in this situation, even if Sableye might be better in this format overall. And then, yeah, I mean, the Armaldo I could take or leave. Generally acceptable pick into someone who took a Snorlax. No issue. So, that is the completed very first draft in the newly established and newly started Callus Draft League. My overall thoughts, I think that Funk had the better draft. I think some of these picks, and it's small things, because I think for a first time, Volta drafted just fine. I would give his overall draft like a B. But if I were drafting him, if I were giving him a first time doing this score, it's like at least an A-. I mean, a very solid effort for someone who has never played this format before. But I think some small things are going to really add up. I hearken back to Regice Fortress going this late. That should never, ever happen. Crazy value for Funk that easily could have been and should have been disallowed. I go back to this Cloyster that just is a fine Mon, but isn't even better than Glalie in my opinion, and is definitely not better than Fortress. I go over to the Lanoon, and I wonder, is that really optimal given the really good value in things like Flygon and Ludicolo and Glalie and Jinx that Funk picked up in the third round? And then I like me the Houndoom pick, but I would have also taken Umbreon. It's another special wall that he could certainly use, and again, it makes life for the Gengar much more difficult, and it gives you a Wish Passer. I feel like Umbreon should have been grabbed somewhere. So yeah, all that being said, while I don't think it's a blowout, I don't think this is one player blatantly outdrafting the other, I do give the advantage in this match, strictly from the draft perspective, because I have absolutely no clue how good or not good Volta is as a player, but strictly from the draft perspective, I give the advantage in this one to SPFunkM. But that's why we have a comment section, so why don't you guys let me know who you think won this draft. And while I certainly am not able to cover every draft, I mean, let's be real. The individual drafts, there's teams of 10. The turnout for this league is crazy. So there's 30 individual drafts on these weeks. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover all of those. But any draft that I do cover, and I'll certainly do at least a handful, any draft that I do cover, I will also have the matches associated with that draft that you guys can look forward to, and there will of course be more drafts as well. So in the meantime, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what you think of this format and what you think of this draft. Who do you think has the advantage here, and why? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Lots more, like 2 months more, Callus Draft League coming up.